Music Not Diving with Scuba.
Music Not Diving is brought to you by Acid. Head over to ac55id.com to check out the fastest growing electronic music marketplace, the central hub for buying, selling, and streaming. Yeah, 1 cent per stream is the payback rate over there. It's a myth on other platforms, but reality on ac55id.com. They also pay 1 cent per stream for podcasts. So if you're watching this on the platform, then we're getting paid. And that's something that doesn't happen directly anywhere else. So yeah, pretty great, right? They also have their own pressing plant. So if you're doing vinyl, then you can use them to fulfill fan-powered orders on demand. Yeah, they can press vinyl on demand. That is pretty amazing too. If you are a label, then you get all of your sales. There is 0% commission. There is a monthly fee, but as a viewer of Music Not Diving, they are waiving that monthly fee for the first 6 months. If you just use the code SCUBA6 when you sign up, then yeah, the first 6 months are free. So head over to ac55id.com and check them out.
Brought to you by AC55ID.
Welcome to the show. I'm Scuba. This is Music Not Diving. Okay, we are getting into the belly of the beast this week. William Morris Endeavour, WME, is one of the biggest talent agencies in the world. It is one of the most important institutions in the whole of the music industry, and we are lucky enough to be welcoming one of their partners, one of their senior agents, to the show to discuss, amongst other things, the world of live music. Steve Hogan is a 20-year veteran of the company. That means he's seen just all sorts of changes, both internally and throughout the industry, and it makes him ideally placed to discuss many of the aspects that we've been talking about in recent weeks of live music, the decline of small clubs, the problems in the festival sector, the relationship between live music and recorded music, and many other things besides. Yeah, Steve is just a perfect person to have on, basically. He is an insider, and I love having insiders on the show. This is not just about having DJs, having musicians on. This is about the music industry in totality, and Steve is ideally placed to give us the inside track on, as I said, the live side of the industry, but also other aspects of it too. So yeah, this is going to be good. Believe me. Just before we get into it, a reminder that you can support the show on Patreon, patreon.com/Scuba Official. There are 2 very reasonably priced tiers there, both of which get you bonus content. If you wanted to send us a one-off donation, you can do that if you were wondering. There is a link in the show notes. And we also have a Discord server, hotflushrecordings.com/Discord, where you can talk to me, send your suggestions for the show, send your feedback, that kind of stuff. What we really want you to do, though, is like this video and subscribe to the channel. Basically, that's the most important thing for us right now. So if you've already done that, then let's get on the phone and talk to Steve Hogan. Steve Hogan, welcome to the show. How you doing?
Thank you very much, Paul. Appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't always do this, but why don't you introduce yourself to the audience, Steve? Like, who are you and why are you here?
Sure. My name's Steve Hogan. I'm a live music agent, and I'm a partner at the William Morris Endeavour Agency, which is probably one of the biggest music agencies in the world, but also representing talent across the board in the disciplines of film, television, books, sports, media. It's a multifaceted company, really. I've been there, next year, in January will be my 20th year at WME.
Is that right?
Which is nuts. And I've been in the business for around 30 years, started DJing and promoting events when I came out of university, and worked for a couple of small agencies before I joined WME. So I've been independent and now fully in the corporate space.
Right.
And
yeah.
My day-to-day really is representing a bunch of artists, musical artists, mainly in the electronic space. If you want me to name names, I can drop a few.
Yeah, give us your big hitting clients.
So across the board, there's Michael Beebe, Eric Prydz, Seth Troxler, Martinez Brothers, Groove Armada, Pete Tong. The list goes on and on and on.
Right. I didn't realize you did Eric. So you're obviously then in regular contact with Mix Herschel.
On a daily basis, yes.
Right.
We know how fun that is.
Okay. Well, you can give him a nudge to come on the podcast. I've been trying to, I have various aspirational attempts to get him on. He used to be, I used to work with him on management.
I remember, yes.
And He's a very interesting chap, isn't he?
I think he would be a colourful 3-hour episode.
Yeah, right. Exactly. So, okay. So WME has been in the headlines recently because there was a takeover, wasn't there?
Well, we went public a few years ago, and the company, the shareholders at the AGM last year decided that they felt that the valuation of the company on the market wasn't reflected to the actual real valuation of we felt as a company. So the company went back into private ownership, and that's what went through earlier this year. So we are all jetting out to Palm Springs next week, all the agents, for a company gathering, and we shall learn a little bit more about the strategy and the direction of the company. But I think as far as WME is concerned, or the group of Endeavour group of companies, it's actually going to be more beneficial to us when it comes to strategy and ownership and growth and development. So we're not having to go back to various kind of shareholder meetings and get things signed off before we can go and activate plans. So it's very exciting.
Okay, just because there are no external shareholders to sort of...
Yeah, you're not having to ratify things. I mean, it obviously can't go into too much detail, but there's, it would take a long process to get certain things ratified and financed if we wanted to go and make an acquisition or hire somebody. So it was a long process, but we are really happy with the way things have shaped up. It's the company itself, it's a great company to work for. I wouldn't change it for the world. And without putting myself in the firing line when it comes to new contract negotiations, I'd be quite happy to stay here for the rest of my working career.
Right. Okay. I mean, it has a bit of a colourful history, doesn't it, WME overall? I mean, there's been a few different ownership structures over the years, hasn't there?
Yeah. I mean,
you've been there for 20 years, so you must have seen a fair few changes.
I have. Yeah. I saw, when I first started 20 years ago, it was William Morris Agency, WMA. We then merged with Endeavour, which is a big Hollywood acting talent agency. And so we became WME, which is William Morris Endeavour. The Endeavour group of companies have then, over the years, acquired various other big companies and organisations. So we have a big umbrella group that includes IMG, who are a big sports brand marketing representation talent agency, and also fashion. It's been through various kind of iterations and connotations of a big talent representation agency over the years. But previously, over 100 years ago, William Morris Agency was the original agency for Charlie Chaplin and Marilyn Monroe. So it does have
absolutely
history.
Absolutely, yeah. So, okay, I've got a long list of questions here, which will, I think, satisfy the curiosity of myself, but also I think a lot of the listeners. We've been talking in broad terms on the show in recent weeks about the state of the club scene, generally speaking, around the world. Also the state of the festival scene, the various challenges that the industry is facing right now and has faced over the last few years since coming out of pandemic. How would you, as a booker of, let's talk, I think, for the purpose of this conversation, let's focus mostly on the kind of electronic side of what, the kind of more clubby end of what you do. What's the club scene like at the moment, would you say?
Let's flip it back a little bit first. I mean, when I first started going clubbing, I was very fortunate to, one of the first clubs I went to was the Hacienda. I grew up in Manchester in the kind of 80s. So before I went to university, I frequented the house a few times and actually had my kind of road to Damascus moment there, really, about wanting to be in electronic music. So the club scene from then to where it is now is obviously very different. I think in recent years, so certainly post-pandemic, we've lost a lot of great venues. There's been a lot of medium-sized and small clubs that have fallen by the wayside, either acquired and turned into apartments or office blocks, and landlords trying to manifest as for their financial kind of weight on these small independent venues, and a lot of venues have been squeezed out. So the clubbing scene now, I would say, it's still relatively healthy. There's a lot less choice than there used to be. Certainly the buying patterns of clubbers have changed dramatically, and we've seen that even more so in the last 12 months, where people are making decisions on clubs and buying tickets really, really late. So previously you could put unless it's a one-off show and you're doing something at Ali Pali or an outdoor park show, you can expect a big spike and rise on the on sale, and the sales will trickle through on a kind of weekly wrap through until show day. But if you're putting an event on at a club, you might not sell much at all on the on sale, and that puts a state of panic into everybody. It's the onus is on the artist as much as it is on the club to promote the event and to get behind it. I'm not a big fan of doing like video idents and stuff like that. It's not really, I think, where a lot of artists want to be, but certainly getting behind them with cross posts and dark ads and supporting them across their social platforms really does make a difference and allows the promoters to have a little bit of breathing space. But you can be, a 1,000 cap club, you could be week of show on the Monday, having only done 250 tickets and having a very twitchy arse and sleepless nights. But by the time you get to the day of the show, including a little bit of walk up, you could be sold out. So I don't envy the job of a promoter these days.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, this is an interesting question, actually. The concept of sort of ticketed events in nightclubs, right? It's something you talked about a lot, and the way that has changed and become the sort of standard over the last couple of decades. Can you talk a little bit about that? When did in your recollection, when did that become the standard thing for basically all nightclubs to be selling advance tickets rather than just having the standard thing as it used to be of mostly walk up?
Well, I mean, I said certainly in the 90s with the growth of the super club, whether it would be the Cream, God's Kitchen, Gatecrasher, etc. Previously, prior to that, you could go to Hacienda. It was not an advance ticket situation, or if you did, you bought it from a local record store, but very, very small allocations. Through to the clubs, Back to Basics, Love to Be, Venus in Nottingham, Golden in Stoke, Ministry London, Bagley's, those kind of clubs are the heyday of clubbing in there.
Yeah, you could buy tickets, but it was by no means essential, right? You could almost always get in on the door.
There was no way for them to track the ticket sales. So, counterfeit ticketing became a big thing at that time. So someone could go and buy a ticket from a record store that could be photocopied or copied, and I think the advent of the super club brought a different level of professionalism into clubbing. So that allowed everybody to up their game when it came to merchandise, to recordings, to mixtapes. Mixtapes transponded into the CDs owned by the major labels, and they got all the tracks cleared, and you had Tony DeVitt, Judge Jules, Pete Tong all mixing these CDs and readily available in your local HMV. And that level of professionalism then also applied to the clubs, and I think that then brought in a real ticketing managed through ticketing partners to try and avoid the counterfeit and the fake tickets that were out there.
Right. And in your experience as a booker, how has that phenomenon, like the advance ticket phenomenon, how has that affected, if at all, the way you work and the way that artists develop, like DJs, the way they develop in the marketplace?
I think from our business, we are very focused on ticket counts. So the on sale process and the sale process through to the actual event is something we monitor regularly. So if we put a show up on sale 12 weeks out, we'll be getting twice weekly counts, usually every Monday, Friday, so we can track it. We have a ticketing team in the office that go speak. They call the promoters up, ask them what the sales are. They log everything into a grid format. We share that with the manager each week so they can see how the shows are selling, and it's done on a regular basis in the same way that you would do with traditional kind of rock gigs. So that's really important aspect from us. The value of tickets also allows us to be able to try and set a level of value and worth for the artist when it comes to festivals, for example. So if an artist in London is worth 5,000 tickets, I know that when a festival comes knocking to try and book them, I'm going to be expecting an X to be the value of that artist based on what they've done and they've shown. It can fluctuate, obviously. Artists ebb and flow, popularity comes and goes, scenes change, genres change. What could be one day's newspaper is tomorrow's chip wrapper, So it's all something to bear in mind. There's definitely there's always a demand for a certain type of artist if they stay on a certain career path. That's always going to be there for them. They may come back every 1 or 2 years or on an album cycle, and you know that they're going to be worth X amount of tickets. And if suddenly that grows and becomes something a bit bigger, you can upgrade the venue, make it a little bit bigger, or add a second show or a third show and build it from there. And it's all just helping to define the artist's kind of real ticket value.
Yeah, okay. Interesting. So, I mean, yeah, as you made that last point, the album cycle question, right, and people being out of the market, an artist being out of the market for, you know, what can be sustained periods sometimes. Some artists are able to hold on to their ticket selling ability, and others are not, or less so. Is there a way of, you know, judging that ability? I mean, I was just as you were saying, I was thinking, because we've had various acts on the label, for example, who have had different levels of staying power with their audience, and I find it very difficult to predict. But I mean, from your perspective, like, you know, talking about, you know, being exposed to data and, you know, taking a bit more of a, well, I'm sure a more of an analytical approach than we do. Can you talk a bit about that? And is there a way of, you know, accurately, you know, making those kinds of predictions?
I don't think there's an accurate way of predicting anything. I think there's a way that the artist has, the relationship the artist has with their fans is really indicative of that growth and that and keeping that level of attainability between the fan and the ticket value. So some artists will go completely off the radar for a period of time while they go and make a new record. Very rarely engage with their audience, keep their socials down to a bare minimum. And then slowly start to build it back up as they reach a point of impact for any new music that's going out there. I think that it's very difficult these days to, you know, the attention span of the generation of where we are now can obviously wane, and I know that's probably something that's been discussed on this show and others before. The goldfish effect,
right? And
I think the older generation, sort of, you know, a good point in case is Groove Armada. So I know you had Andy on the show recently. Well, that'll
I'm not sure whether this is going to have gone out or not until this. In relationship to this one, but yeah, I had a good chat about farming with Andy.
So I've been working with Groove Armada for about 15 years, and they came off the back of obviously Vertigo, and then Goodbye Country Hello Nightclub, and then Lovebox. I started working with them just after Lovebox. So we had the Black Light, White Light album, which was quite seminal in their parts, and then progressed, you know, further from there. They also did a groundbreaking deal with Bacardi, where they gave Bacardi the whole album, didn't put it out through a label. They were out their label deal with Sony, with Jive. They gave Bacardi the album, and we helped broker that deal through them.
Did they? Yeah. I would have grilled Andy about this had I known about it. Okay.
Yeah. So it was quite a groundbreaking deal at a time where you had all these massive 360 deals that were being thrown around. There was Deadmau5 and Swedish House Mafia, etc. It became, you know, the right holders started to own the keys a little bit more. You didn't need the label. You didn't need a record company to get behind it. You didn't need the marketing strength, because you had an audience, you had a fan base, and suddenly you found a very wealthy partner who wasn't in the music space but really wanted a product to market and saw music being as a sexy way to get to that kind of audience. So you'll have to ask Andy.
So let me just cut in. Did they get much pushback about that? Because I mean, obviously,
from fans?
A topic a topic we've discussed a fair bit on the show is the concept of selling out and how that has declined in the importance of that seems to have declined in the audience.
I don't believe so. I don't believe so. No, I think you'd have to ask Tom and Andy how they felt about it. I know from an agent perspective, it gave the band a really good boost in the market. It gave them some elevation. There was a global branding presence across with Bacardi, and it was a series of events that were being done. I think they weren't the only artist. There was a couple of other artists involved as well. But I did some really high-profile shows in various sunny, glorious parts of the world. I actually we did a show in Rio at the top of is it Sugarloaf Mountain, the big one with Christ the Redeemer.
I've not been there actually, but yes, I think I know what you mean.
So we did a big gig up there. There's some fantastic shows around. So it was really interesting times. But I think their engagement with an audience has always been the connectivity they've had. It felt very natural. Their audience has grown with them. It's been very organic. It hasn't been They've not gone out there to try and win votes and win new fans. They've very much just continued to do what they've done, and the fans have grown with them, and they've built new fans along the way. We have regularly, when we've toured, well, the last tour they did around the UK with the band a few years ago, Tom and Andy just felt like it became really hard work getting everyone back together to do the band. There's 16 people involved with that when they're on the road. So everybody had their own different projects and different focuses in life. So Tom and Andy very much continue as DJs, and Groove Armada is still very much a touring act with a great show. We sold out Coco on Friday, amazing atmosphere. It worked really, really well, and they've been doing it for so long they know how to work a crowd. I think that the audience that came to see them when they played live, the last shows that we did in the UK, you would see different generations of audience there. So there were people would come backstage, and it was like, I've bought your first record 25, 30 years ago, and this is my son. He's been a big fan, and now his son's
right.
here as well. And it was like 3 generations of audience there. So I think that was, that if you engage, going back to your original question, if you engage with your audience on a regular basis and it feels organic and it feels natural, they will go with you. It's more about the kind of, I don't know, the vote grabbers, when it comes to the DJ Mag poll, and it's like, vote for me, I want to be number one, and it's just a bit shallow, to be honest. So I think if you take a break, coming back is generally a healthy thing, because it's allowing you to take a fresh view on the world and to re-engage with your audience and recognise why they're part of your audience in the first place.
All right. Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. Let's just go back to clubs. Is it fair to say that there are few, looking at the European club scene as a whole, or maybe in North America as well, there are fewer slots to go around every weekend, and there are many more DJs trying to get those slots.
Absolutely.
Is that a broad? Yeah.
Yeah, 100%,
Okay.
100%. And I think it comes down to cost as well. Smaller clubs are operating on smaller margins. They can't afford to pay the big DJs the wages that they're looking for, especially when it comes to bigger clubs and festivals. So, I personally recommend to all of my clients to make sure that you are keeping one foot in clubland. And that goes from, some really, really big names to making sure that once in a while you still doff your cap and keep one foot on the dance floor. It's really important. I still go to clubs. I'm early 50s. I still love going to clubs. And the day that I don't is when I'll end up thinking about hanging up my headphones and doing something different. But that energy when you walk into a small club, 300, 400 cap, and the energy hits you and you feel the warmth and you feel the vibe, I get tingles, and I still get the hair stand up on my arms and my neck and get goosebumps for that right moment. I think that's so relevant to what we do as an industry, and we can't lose sight of that. We really can't. The clubs are the lifeblood of what we do. It's so important that we make sure that the club scene survives. New artists come through, new artists are growing and given an opportunity to have a platform to perform, but also other artists that have been around for 10, 15, 20 years still remain relevant and remain attached to the dance floor.
Yeah, I think that's the sort of the crux of the issue, right? Because basically every DJ that I know, all of my friends are not playing out as much as they want to be, basically, and it's essentially because there are fewer gigs to go around. I think. There's the two things: there's the more people doing it, but as I said, the available slots are that much fewer. This is taking a step back from you working in a big organization such as you do. Like, what does it say, or what are the that to me that's a big challenge to the music as a whole, right? Because as you said, clubs are the grassroots of it. It's the feeder. The big names come from that ecosystem, and the ecosystem supports the musical innovators that keep the music vital, right? So, how much of a threat is this to the music and the health of the whole thing? I think for those old enough to remember in the old rave days, I think when nightclubs transponded and transformed from your Hitman and Her, Sharon and Tracy type clubs to musically becoming more in line with the Hacienda and the Eclipse, that spawned a new generation of clubbers, and not everyone could afford the going to clubs. They couldn't afford to go to big parties, so the illegal raves became a big part of our scene, and
I listened to Jane Fitz, who did your podcast, and Jane talked about the growth and understanding of putting on shows and putting on events in non-traditional club spaces, which I think is really important. And that has actually allowed the scene to grow and develop and build over the years, and it's still a very relevant part of what we do. I've been to great events in Germany, in Holland, and in Italy, where in non-traditional club spaces, outdoor spaces, where they're literally rocking up with a sound system, a makeshift kind of bar, and it's something that's put on by a bunch of friends, and it's actually really, really good vibe. And those things are really still important. But I think as far as the nightclub scene and continuing to keep this thing alive and keeping it building, it is going to be a challenge for people. There's always going to be the big mega clubs and the big mega raves and the big festivals, which will service the top end of the industry and keep that mid to top end level alive. But there is a great risk that if we lose more nightclubs to us, we're going to lose those opportunities for new acts breaking to come through. Luckily, there's a lot more opportunities out there for new artists to find their way and have their voice heard than there was 20, 30 years ago. So there are other opportunities for artists to break out there. But it's still very much a concern if we don't have the venues to be able to put on events. And it's the small ones we have to start with. They are the lifeblood of what we do. It's the bread and butter of our industry. And if those clubs are not able to open and facilitate events on a weekly basis, that's a huge loss to our business.
How much of a conflict is there between a big company such as yours and the quote unquote underground ethos that dance music is supposed to, consist of? Like, I mean, why don't you have a stab at defending the big industry in underground music?
Well, we see ourselves as a boutique agency within the bigger agency. Everybody who works on my team, one's a former resident for Bugged Out. One went to Lipper in Liverpool, and I actually met while she was stage managing for Camp and Furnace in Liverpool at a gig. We all club together each weekend. We go to events together. We roll together. It's part of our A&R process that we have assistants and agents on the dance floor every weekend, so people are picking things up. So I think we keep that lifeblood of what we do as a company. We're all still clubbers at heart. That's not changed. So although we are constructed within a bigger organisation, a more corporate organisation, we're still very much firmly rooted on the dance floor, and our fingers are on the pulse of what's hot and coming through. One of the partners in what we do is Pete Tong. Pete's a part of he's a JV between WME and with Pete, with what we created in the electronic department. So Pete is very much, again, the voice, the broadcasting voice of weekly kind of dance radio. He's got great ears. Everybody wants to be, nobody says no to Pete Tong. So everybody's sending him new music all the time. We have weekly A&R calls. We all sit together and we talk through things. It's very much a team process and a panel process. So if we're looking at signing something and we're looking at seeing what's out there and what scenes are developing, what genres are really buzzing, Pete's really key and important to be part of that. But equally important are the assistants who go out to the clubs every weekend.
Yeah. So okay, I'm willing to accept that. What scenes are bubbling at the moment? What's the exciting stuff that's happening that's catching your collective ear, A&R wise?
I mean,
is it UK Garage? Is UK Garage massive now, as everyone says this?
It's definitely having its moment. It's coming back. I mean, you look at what Sammy Vergie's doing in Interplanetary Criminal.
Yeah, right.
It's huge. Eliza Rose. It's big. There's no two ways about it. You step out into Europe and it's hard techno. So
is it still hard techno? So I've a hypothesis that hard techno has had its day and is on it. Maybe slightly wishful thinking. I
think in some places it's definitely waned. And I think that some of the brands that have been out there pushing the envelope for the last couple of years are certainly starting to feel a little bit of a pinch. But I represent I represent Amelie Lenz. I mean, she did a thing at Coachella recently with Sarah Landry and I think it was Fita Letiago or Indira Paganotta, one of them. Apologies if I get that wrong. But Amelie said to me that the last record she was left on was at 195 BPM, and that's just I don't know how you follow that.
That number has just been going up and up and up, right?
It's crazy. But obviously, the Afro House sound the last couple of years has really been growing and building from what Keinemusik are doing and Black Coffee, and there's a huge growth in that area. Keinemusik just did 65,000 tickets in Berlin. I mean, it's huge business.
That's insane.
It's completely insane. Completely insane. But I feel that a lot of that audience is, artists or customers that used to be more into kind of hip hop lane that suddenly get a feel for it and then migrate a little bit towards it. So that scene to me is, it's not built on a real essential clubbing crowd. I think when you stand and you watch that audience, they are literally standing with their phones up, filming the DJs play. The first, 10 rows can just be people holding their phones up filming. To me, it's not that exciting in that respect. I really like what some venues are doing with their kind of no phone policy, whether that be obviously from as you know, from Berghain and P-Bar across to, there's a couple of venues in Ibiza doing it in some of the club rooms. The Noat guys are doing that in Holland as well with some of their events. And I went to Fortet recently at Earth, and that was very much, it wasn't a no phone show, but nobody had their phones out. It was people that were living in the moment, enjoying the sounds, enjoying the vibe. There was no huge production. It was one mirror ball above Kieran. He was playing around, and he had a desk lamp, and every so often when a record crescendoed, he would just hold the lamp up and it would spin off against the light, and that was it. And
I think amongst certain audiences, it's become very uncool to get your phone out. I think it's sort of seeped into the public consciousness a bit that you don't want to be that guy, basically.
How many thousands of hours of redundant video must be on people's phones for that moment when Martin Garrix took to the stage somewhere and fireworks went off, and everybody thought this is the coolest thing since sliced bread.
Stored on Apple servers somewhere, just clogging up.
Those clouds are getting very heavy.
Yeah, exactly. So, okay. So I mean, if you could put your finger on one, what's the hottest sound in the UK at the moment? Taking the UK.
I think as far as the UK is concerned, that garage sound has really kind of bounced back. It really has. I mean, I was very lucky to be involved in it first time around. I used to represent Double 99, Rip Groove, TJR.
Oh, did you really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Andy from Ice Cream Records, big shout out, and Tim Deluxe, of course.
Right. Yeah. Right.
So from that Twice as Nice kind of sound, the UKG sound, I guess you like Dream Team and.
Yeah, I've had Spoonie on the show before a couple of years ago.
He's great.
And he's absolutely fascinating. I didn't really realise how big they were back then. He was telling me about their TV show and all the different stuff they were doing.
It was huge.
Crazy.
It was huge.
Yeah.
And it spawned off, a full culture. It became a lifestyle. This is the thing I say about what we do is, in our space in the live business. It's not a job, it's a lifestyle. And I think the UKG lifestyle that spun off the back of that, from Twice as Nice going into Iron Napa, into the growth and development of the scene that it did, it was such a huge thing. But yeah, it's definitely having its moment. It's come back around. But I mean, straight up house music as well, good quality vocal house music as well, I think is also having its little shine at the moment. Shout out to what Defected and Glitterbox and those guys are doing. Yeah. They've built a really strong industry. Simon done more over the years, and more closely, more recently with Wes and the team there. They've got a strong event business, a strong music business. It's all recorded, podcasts, radio. It's become a real machine.
Is the UK still the place that it once was in terms of the kind of influence that it has over the rest of the industry stylistically and in its general sort of prestige?
I think so. Yes, I think so. I think you can't beat London. From where I mean, I spent years living in Bristol. That was another strong musical heritage. There's little pockets around the country. I grew up in Bolton, just outside Manchester, so I spent my teenage years growing up through that Manchester era and going through all the clubbing world of that. So I've lived in a few cities that have really strong musical heritage. And I think, you look at what London offers every weekend. There's such a broad spectrum. And while small venues are disappearing, promoters are thinking on their feet, and there's more alternative spaces coming forward. So you look at what the likes of Broadwick Live have done with drum sheds, and before that Printworks, LWE have done amazing work at trying to build some of these locations and venues out. There's a lot of really cool people in London doing the right kind of thing. So I firmly believe it's still the epicenter of what we do.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think I agree with you. Yeah, I mean, even with the caveat of the challenges that we've been talking about with regards to the small venues and the wider challenges in the industry, I think London is still. I think it's just a wider variety of stuff that happens. Stylistically, I mean, like it's not comparable. I don't think to anywhere else, really, is it? In terms of a city?
No, because I think a lot of cities are very kind of pigeonholed in what they do. Berlin's very Berlin. Lisbon's very Lisbon. What it has. Amsterdam has a little bit more of a diverse culture and musically with where it's coming. But I think there's no other place in the world where you can literally go out 7 nights a week and have 7 different types of music, all well attended, well organised events.
Yeah. Okay, talk to me about festivals. Is the festival scene in as much trouble as some people say it is? And what are the pros and cons of festivals, generally speaking, in there?
I think festivals have. Coming out of the pandemic, everybody had a gold rush moment for a year or two where you could put shows on sale and they'd sell really quickly. People just wanted something to go to and have an event and wrap around after being cooked up for so long. I think the last couple of years, there's been a lot of market saturation. There's too much choice for people. I think a lot of the lineups are replicated. There needs to be more diversity in the lineups, and that's not just gender balance and persons of colour, but I think musically as well. I think
just different people on the bill, right?
You can there's a block of maybe 20, 30 DJs that just appear on every single lineup, and all power to them and the teams around them that are doing their jobs right. But I think for the longevity and the growth and development of festivals and the continuation.
Can I just interrupt you there? Is that just because of bookers being risk averse? Is that basically the reason that those lineups kind of
and I think if you're booking those DJs that are each festival will do their own market research. They will go out and they'll reach out to their audience and find out who do you want to see on the show next year. Who was your highlight from this year, and generally. There is a cluster of DJs that do deliver on a regular basis, musically and show wise. They put on a great show. People come away from that feeling like that was fucking amazing. So there is always going to be a core strength of that, but maybe that's 40 to 50% of your lineup. The rest of it should be a bit more diverse and more depth and programming to it, in my opinion. But festivals are working to spread to budgets and to spreadsheets. They have to make things work fiscally, and they have to answer to other investors and shareholders. So there will come a point where some people do make a few moves that you might think, oh, didn't expect that. I think Part Life as a festival in Manchester, I think, are great at what they do, programming wise. But again, they will move and ebb and flow with their audience. So as their audience changes and mutates and grows, then they will also program accordingly. So. As an agency from our side, some years we've had 12 acts on Part Life. Other years we've had 6 acts on Part Life. Some years we've had 20 acts on Part Life. So it varies from year to year. And that's very much allowing adaptation for musical tastes.
To what extent is it fair to say that festivals have got festivals have attracted too much of the audience's attention to the detriment of the club ecosystem? Is that fair, or to what extent is it fair?
I don't think it's fair, because I think the two fuel each other. I think when you go to a club, you're able to make your night out work for 30, 40 quid in your pocket. If you go into a festival, you could be spending up to £1,000 by the time you've bought your accommodation, your train or your travel, the ticket itself, plus everything else that goes with it. So it's very much an economy of scale, and I believe that is a key factor in the issues that festivals are facing over the last couple of years. Since coming out of the pandemic, production costs have risen by 20-25%. We've seen that from our side. It's more expensive to get a flight. It's more expensive to hire SFX or to hire a production manager to come on board and build a show for you. So those costs have to be passed on to the festival. Then the festival are then passing those costs on to the customer. There's a finite amount of money that you can raise each year, or you can take from bar spends or from pitches or from sponsorship. So at some point something has to give, and generally that becomes a tick on the price of the actual festival ticket. So if festival tickets are going up to a point where it's 200, 250, 300 quid for a festival, as I say, it's £1,000 by the time you've done that. You might be able to go and have a week away somewhere in a little Greek island for that kind of money, including your spending money. So people are very much voting with their feet.
And is that a problem? I mean, obviously it is for individual festivals, but I mean, as a kind of, looking at the, the sector from a bird's eye view, how much of a threat is this? And, what's the kind of medium term outlook for maybe the relationship between two things? I mean, I know you've just, contradicted my theory there, but I mean, there is a relationship between clubs and festivals, which is, I mean, I appreciate what you just said, but it can be a little bit more, there can be a little bit more of a conflict, I think, sometimes. So what's the kind of medium term outlook to this, would you say?
I think we need, as an industry, we all need to be taking a look at ourselves and managing a few of these costs attached to the shows themselves. So artists will always, if an artist becomes too big for a festival, because there's a tipping point where an artist may be worth 20,000, 30,000 tickets on their own. So to go and do a festival show, they're giving away control of their production, they're giving away control of their merch, they're giving away control of marketing and the way that they are presented and the optics to their audience. So somebody like Festival Republic or Live Nation or independent promoters may come to us and say, look, we know that this artist is worth X amount of tickets. Why don't you come and do a show with us outdoors instead of going to play all these other festivals around London? Generally, a big act can only probably do one of those festival shows anyway. You're going to have exclusivity to manage. So you have to weigh up the option between the two. And it's like, do I take the show, do it on my own with the risk attached to it? So if it only does 20,000 tickets, we're not going to make as much money as we would if we'd taken the festival offer. But does that allow you a degree of integrity and to be able to control your own destiny in that respect? So that's always a question that comes into mind. And I think we do have to be mindful that there is a finite amount of money that's out there people have to spend. Economics are going up and down on a daily basis. They've just dropped the interest rate a little bit, I see, today. So that's going to be helpful to some people short term. But the cost of living is, there is a crisis out there for certain people, but young people in the 20 to 30 bracket do have a bit more disposable income. If they're staying at home with their parents, they don't have a mortgage to pay, or they're renting with friends, they might have a little bit more cash to play with. So that audience, as far as festivals are concerned, is their kind of target demographic. The next step after that, I guess, is the older crowd who've, and put myself in that category, who maybe paid off the mortgage or got a little mortgage to pay. Kids have grown up and gone to college or have left home, and you have that older kind of raver that still wants to go out and have some fun and enjoy themselves. Myself, fully in that category. So I think as far as the future of festivals is concerned, I think everybody needs to work together to ensure that the festivals have the right kind of price point, the right kind of lineups that are diverse, and we have to just make sure that we all have a duty of care to ensure that business continues to grow and sustain itself.
Sure, absolutely. So we're going to come back to ticket prices. So stick a pin in that. As you were saying that, though, I mean, what you mentioned there about integrity of an artist versus, just making money, as soon as, in the immediate term. As an agent, how involved do you get in those decisions? And I imagine varies artist by artist, but I mean, from a professional point of view, is that a big consideration in terms of when you're as you're planning a diary and as you're planning the kind of career of someone as a good agent does? How deep in the weeds do you get with that stuff? And what's your general thoughts on it? We get really deep in the weeds. I think when it comes to sitting down and planning the strategy for the year ahead for a client, I'll generally sit down at some point in the summer
sit down with the manager and hopefully the artists as well, if they're available, and we'll say, right, this is what we've achieved this year. This is where we're at. It's not all just about the financial numbers. It's about, do you feel you've played the right kind of venues? Have you really enjoyed what you're doing? Because the money's one side, but you also need to have fulfillment from doing what you do. There's no point playing a load of gigs just for a load of cash unless you're on a retirement strategy, because you just feel a little bit kind of dead behind the eyes, So it's really important to make sure you have the balance right. I think the strategy part will sit down from the beginning and we will look at the diary, take out, say, right, I really enjoyed those. That was brilliant. And I want to do that again. I want to play that more. I want to do that less. And we take all that information and we'll go and kind of build a strategy out. And generally it starts with a global plan of trying to put in the key territories and where we're going to be in each market at what times of year. Then we get a bit more into the weeds on calls. We don't necessarily, the artists need to be attached to that. That's generally just myself and the manager sitting down, working through those 12-month plans and saying, right, does this all tick the box as far as their personal life's concerned? And they'll go away and make sure family time's laid in and holidays are put in, and he's not available or she's not available that time. There's a wedding going on. So we put all that kind of minutiae into it. And then it allows me time to then go and start building it out and booking it. So it is a collaborative process from the beginning. It needs to be. There's definitely information that's key to what I do that comes from the artist directly. So it's really important that we have that communication with the artist.
So what's the biggest offer you've turned down on the basis of artistic integrity?
Obviously couldn't go into too much detail, but it's definitely high-end six figures.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And what kind of thing was it? Was it just a festival offer? Was it more corporate or? Yeah.
There was one thing that was an event that was attached to a brand that the artist wasn't particularly comfortable with for whatever reason. So that was pure artist integrity, which I totally respect. It's really important to still have that. I have turned down some festival offers on the basis of it just being a rather obnoxious number attached to something, because they simply wanted to rubbish another festival and take the acts and, get the artists to come and play for them. Yeah, they literally, they were like, why are you going to play for them? The other festival had more integrity and a bit more credibility, and their competitor just came in with a big check and said, look, why don't you just come and play for us and we'll make sure you have a great show. But we can see through that. It's a bit transparent, and I make everything, when I present artists with offers and we sit down and we talk about, I give them commentary on everything, what I feel, and generally that commentary is absorbed and listened to, and that helps make decisions.
Okay. I really want to ask you for specific examples, but I completely understand.
You're not going to get them.
Okay, let's talk about Kneecap. This is a really interesting, I think, case in point. I think they've, there's obviously lots of political toing and froing about them, and they've become a little bit of a punch bag. Like, to me, this is an interesting question because they have been, I think, vocal about political issues in a way which is really unusual for acts these days. And I wondered, what do you think about acts being political, and to what extent can it be damaging? And maybe if I don't know if you have any relationship with Kneecap, but if you want to talk about that particular instance or example, like, what do you think about these kinds of what can be turned into thorny issues, but I suppose what also can be pretty useful points of marketing to look at it as a cynical way, because obviously their profile has been massively boosted by this whole incident. So talk a little bit about that.
I'm a great believer in free speech, and I believe that everybody has an opinion and is entitled to that opinion, whether it be in agreement or disagreement with others. It's the way that the opinion is delivered, and I think that it's the way that the opinion is discussed. I'm a great believer in conversation, and I do believe that if somebody has a very strong opinion and they feel that they need to voice that opinion, there are certain ways and means of doing that. I'm not going to comment on Kneecap specifically because it is a very political hot potato, but in other eras, in other times, we've had artists like Bjork, for example, was a great supporter of Tibet, and
of course.
was very vocal in her in her belief. Sinead O'Connor was another artist that was very vocal in her beliefs. So I do believe that it's really important for the industry to have these people, these bastions of truth and integrity that are really keen to put that message out there and open people's eyes, to what's going on in the world. There are a lot of conflicts, obviously many conflicts going on in the world in different countries, and there have been for many years. So I think it's really important that we do shine a light on these things occasionally, but it's the way it's handled and it's the way it's presented, I think is really important. So if one of my client wanted to put something out there and say something, I would make sure that they had a thought process attached to it, and maybe spoke to somebody with a bit of experience in the business to be able to give them some real kind of counsel, because once you put that out there, you can't take it back.
I mean, do you agree that it's become much less common, and particularly when it's built so explicitly into the act itself, right? Because it's one thing making a statement about a political issue. Lots of artists do that. But I think much less common these days for an act to be explicitly political in of itself, right? And which I think Kneecap, broadly speaking, are. I had a conversation about this on a podcast I recorded yesterday, and we were trying to compare the broad political atmosphere around musicians now with the early 90s, and trying to compare Kneecap specifically with Rage Against the Machine. And them being, that first Rage Against the Machine album is basically an encouragement to violent insurrection, right?
Absolutely.
And that sort of stuff just doesn't seem to be at all prevalent anymore. I mean, do you agree with that? And how do you feel about this whole thing?
Obviously I think Rage Against the Machine were coming out of a very difficult kind of period. I think it's less of a difficult period now. Obviously, yes, there's more insurrections and more civil wars going on around the world. But I think you look at the punk era and everything that they spawned, coming out the back of it. I'm not sure if you remember Chumbawamba with everything that they did. I
certainly do. Yeah, they were very political, weren't they?
Very political.
Yeah.
I think that it's important for us to have these figures in life, because I do believe that there's a lot of people in the world that get away with it. And I believe if they're not held accountable in some way, shape or form, they will continue to get away with it. And I'm not going to go any further into that on the political spectrum. But I do I do believe that, that music and art go hand in hand with politics in some respects. And if somebody is feeling oppressed, or we see something that we don't feel that we agree with, then there is an artistry attached to a way of saying something about it.
Yes. Okay. I mean, that's quite diplomatic.
And that's probably about as diplomatic as I'm going to be.
Okay. Fair enough. Okay. Here's another one you may need to be diplomatic about. So we're turning to the topic of ticket prices and the economics of live music, generally speaking. Is Ticketmaster as bad as everyone says it is?
We do a lot of business with Ticketmaster, so I'm not gonna throw anybody under the bus. But we do a lot of business with other ticketing platforms as well. I think the main issue that we have, and this is a very public forum to talk about that, is the costs that are hidden within the price of a ticket. The artist is very much involved in the process of setting the ticket pricing from the beginning. Well, if not the artist, at least the manager. And when we come to shaping up tours and presenting offers, the ticketing part is very much, it's a very inclusive part of that conversation. For me in electronic, when it comes to club shows, I always try and keep the ticket price somewhere between 20 and 30 quid, because I think as far as a club is concerned, especially if it's an A-level act, that kind of level needs to be, that sits about right to be able to make the finances work for everybody. If it's an up-and-coming act and it's somebody on the lower level, there's no reason why you can't be doing a £10, £12 ticket price, because I think there's enough money there for everybody to make an earning from. The clubs themselves generate all the bar take and the revenue. Obviously, that's a negligible point if people are not drinking as much as they used to. In Spain, for example, it's still very prevalent that people will drink heavily before they go out and then maybe buy 2 drinks in the club. So you have to understand that the clubs have got bills like everybody else. They need to operate. They've got to pay their staff and turn on the lights. So I get that. But I think when it comes to the bigger tours, dynamic pricing is a big conversation that's had. And I think the popular acts, as shows are going on sale, those tickets are being dynamically priced to fit the demand that's out there. But you get some artists that are working on a ticket price which they believe is a fair price for their audience, and there's other artists out there, shall remain nameless, that are basically working on a ticket price that they're being absorbed into because of the high guarantees and the fees that they're getting. So it's very much it's very much a fluid conversation. And I think if you are an artist who's doing their last ever tour, Black Sabbath, for example, some of those tickets just in GA are going for £500-600 resale on secondary ticketing. So if an artist is willing to deal with the flack and is willing to kind of deal with the fallout of that and set a ticket price at a certain level, knowing that there's going to be secondary ticketing involved, then that's something that they have to deal with. But I think if you are a heritage act who has very little life left in them as far as touring is concerned, there's no reason why you can't charge a high-end ticket price, because this will probably be the last time that your fans will get to see you, as long as you're not alienating your audience in that respect.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, isn't it? That last one. I mean, my opinion really is that people always say musicians should get paid more until it's time to pay musicians more, right? And dynamic pricing seems to me, from the artist's perspective, the best way to price a ticket, right? And if you're talking about trying to really calculate what an act is worth, that's the way you do it, right? Because I mean, what a ticket is worth, or should be worth, or could be worth, what someone is willing to pay for it, and that's what you see on the secondary market, right? Now there is another factor, of course, to take into consideration, as you say, because I mean, you have a relationship with your fans, and you don't just want to be ripping people off, and you don't want to restrict live music to rich people. I mean, enough things are restricted to rich people in society today. You don't want to extend it to live music, but it's a difficult question, isn't it? And I think particularly with regards to the relationship between live music and recorded music, because of course there has been or the relationship has changed there over the last 25 years. So I mean, how do you? Yeah, I mean, talk a little bit about this in generally speaking. Like, what the kind of, who is more important? And obviously, this varies wildly act by act. But the primacy of or the importance of musicians getting paid versus a quote unquote fair price that people can afford.
I think, and it varies from artist to artist. Some artists take a look at a real deep dive into the on sale, into the ticket markets, into what's getting out there to secondary ticketing to try and protect their audience, protect their fans. Kieran Fortet is a great advocate of that with everything he does. Low price tickets, everything is managed through an independent company. There's no big Ticketmaster involved, and I believe he really does care about his audience and about his fan base with what he does. There are a bunch of clients that I represent that will be happy to sit down and talk through the dynamics of an on sale, and they'll be happy to talk through the ticket pricing and how the tickets are being distributed to the different ticketing companies. Does the venue have an allocation on their box office so the venue is able to make some money from the booking fees that are going on that? And it's very much a good conversation to have. I had it last week with a client. There were 50 tickets left on the door for a show. And the venue said to us, look, can we put these 50 tickets up? We'd like to just hike the price up a little bit just to make it work. And the artist was very much included in that conversation. They wanted to make sure that it wasn't too high a price so it scared people off and didn't reflect badly on them. But they understood that there was demand there because they'd held 50 tickets back. The show was sold out. There could be a little bit more that goes into the pot to do it. But it's making it work at the right kind of price point for people. So you're not alienating your audience, but there's enough money to go around for everybody. And I think, we are in an ecosystem where it used to be that the major weight of the record labels is where the finances came from. So you'd sell, hundreds of thousands of CDs or albums, and that would be a big chunk of money that would be eventually accounted back to you after several audits, no doubt, that you would get paid on. But that was a long-term payment plan. Whereas the live industry is very much quick fix. So you put on a show, it sells out in 6 weeks, you do the gig, you're paid instantly. And on top of that, you've got the ancillaries. So you might do £10 a head merch. So on 1,000 cap shows, another 10 grand in your pocket, of which 60% of that is probably profit. So it's more instantaneous, it's more of a big hit. But you're right, the dynamics have changed over the last 20, 25 years greatly. The live industry now is such an important element of any artist's kind of income for the year. So the artist does have a say in how things are managed and how the finances are set.
Yeah, I mean, my sense of the Ticketmaster thing actually is that it's, and they've said this explicitly, Michael Rapino has said this, that, you know, a large part of what they do is really act as a shield for the artists between them and their fan base, right? They're the ones that take the flack and take the heat. And a lot of there was an article in the Guardian actually over the weekend which repeated lots of falsehoods, quite frankly, about the way that, for example, the Taylor Swift thing was rolled out, and like kind of completely putting the blame on Ticketmaster. But they would say, okay, that's part of what we're getting paid for. Right, which is a fascinating thing, really, because they have really become a bogeyman.
Yeah, completely.
Right,
but when it comes to tickets, when it comes to the ancillaries and the add-ons, I'm very much an advocate for my clients, especially, is trying to have an all-in ticket price. So if it's a £50 ticket, £3.50 of that is allocated as a ticketing booking fee, which goes to the ticketing company. And there might be another couple of quid, which is then like a facility fee, or there might be a charity donation and whatever. So on a £50 ticket, the net out of that to the promoter is about £45. You take off the VAT of that, which is at 20%, so that leaves it at £36. So that £36 as a net amount is what we should be really basing the costs on the show and what we're doing, so that everybody takes their chunk, everyone's paid fairly. And we are working with a base bottom line as opposed to a false bottom line. People look at people. You think, okay, it's £50 a ticket, 1,000 people, 50 grand. The artist is getting 25, 30 grand of that. That's not fair economic.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, you mentioned Groove Armada's live show earlier, which must be a just eye-wateringly expensive show to put on, right? I mean, that's got to be a big challenge. And the challenges of touring live, like proper live music, have been pretty well documented. Well, I've got a theory that this is affecting the music that gets made, because if you can't make if a live band isn't a realistic business proposition at any level, then just few people will do it, right? And the DJ model, of course, is a thing of beauty from a money-making perspective, and I don't think it's a complete coincidence that this kind of music has become much more prevalent in popular culture. I mean, what do you think about that? And maybe comment on Groove Armada as well on their particular live show.
I think when it comes to the difference between Groove Armada as a DJ show and Groove Armada as a live show is apples and oranges. So to take the live band on the road, as I say, I think it's like 16 people on the road. That's probably 7 or 8 of those are band members, the rest are crew, etc. on top. Maybe it goes up to 20 when you're touring with with your own production as well. So you're talking, a couple of coaches, a couple of trucks. It's very expensive kind of proposition to take out on the road. The DJ model, as you say, is a real gift to producers and artists, because you can literally make that music that day, mix it down yourself, take it out and road test it in the club. And it gives you an opportunity to have a direct communication with your audience. It's like an instant karma on the music that you're playing. And you say, oh, that worked, that didn't work, I want to tweak that, I'm going to change that. And then you go through another process again. So road testing is really important out there. But the development and the growth of the superstar DJ that we had from the 90s has really allowed DJs to be able to go into these festivals and these large-scale events and do great amount of tickets, but with a minimal scale production. So as far as audio is concerned, you look at Bicep or Chemical Brothers, Underworld, etc. over the years. The show becomes about the visual element to it. Musically is always going to be the main integral part. But if you're just standing for 2 hours to watch a DJ play in an arena, pretty fucking boring. Got to be honest.
Right.
But you have to make a show, or build a show around them. Musically, it's going to work. There needs to be something that's going to grab people's attention and keep people entertained. The music is one thing, of course. It's really key to that process. But the video element, the creative, the production around it, the lighting. Again, going back to Fortet with what he did in those Ali Pali shows with the light balls, hanging down. It's a really important aspect to what you're doing, especially when you're going to these bigger rooms and these bigger venues to do it. But going back to the growth of the DJ, a DJ can start off getting 500 quid a night, just growing and developing, suddenly have a hit on Beatport, and that goes to $5,000 a night, and then they have another hit, and then suddenly it's at 10 grand, 12 grand, 15 grand a night. They're still essentially doing the same thing, but in a bigger arena. So you need to justify that growth, and I think you need to build something around you as an artist. And as you say, it's re-engaging with your audience and giving something back. If somebody comes and sees you 3 or 4 times in a year as a fan, you want them to give them something, a different offering every time you see it.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Whilst I suppose maintaining a degree of familiarity and, I suppose brand awareness for one of us, or brand, establishment, for want of a better term. So the other thing which has emerged over recent years, or very recent years, has been the rise of the influencer DJ. And the example that I will use is Fish 56 Octagon, who divides opinion amongst some people, but has been extraordinarily successful. And his calendar is just it's extensive this summer for sure. So and this is something which is it's the music is important, but it's not perhaps the be all and end all of the nature of the attraction, right? So he's essentially a character on social media who has become, who is very relatable and very I think, or someone who's just like, he's a sympathetic kind of figure. He's the sort of like, I suppose, the kind of friendly uncle of classic dance music or something, because he seems to have, his family seems to be quite young, right?
I think it's a generation, isn't it? He's grown up with, I think, I was actually switched on to him a couple of years ago, and a promoter at a club said to me, check out this Fish 56 Octagon guy. And I went to look at it and I was like, okay, maybe it's a generational thing, but the more it came about and the more I learned about him, then the more I kind of got switched on to the fact that actually, do you know what? He's a fanboy. He's living his best life. I mean,
exactly.
Fair play to him.
And I think that's why he's relatable. Basically, he's kind of one of us, kind of.
It's that pinch yourself moment. It's like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm getting away with this. And fair play to him for what he's doing. I think there's an element of DJs in the world that come from, I don't know, like, the reality TV shows of this world that we've seen have come across, that I'm really not into whatsoever, not fully behind whatsoever. But I understand where he's coming from. He's local lad, done good. He's having the time of his life, and can't fault him for doing that. I think the real test is going to be when he starts to make music, because I think he's started to label up, I believe. So he's got a label that's going now. So he's going to be signing tracks and A&Ring stuff and utilising his audience and his fan base to kind of build sales, which is cottage industry. Fair play to him. But let's see what happens when he puts his own music out and see how that grows and develops. That'll be the interesting part.
Right. I mean, do you have the sense that in some respects, music has become less important in the marketing of an act at a very broad level? I mean, this is something which has been commented on a bit, and I kind of have the broad sense that this might be the case, and in terms of like, just the visual side of things becoming more important, and the way in which people interact with culture these days more generally, with through TikTok and through short form video. Do you have a sense of that at all? And maybe can you comment on whether this might be a thing or not?
I do believe that the two go hand in hand until there comes a tipping point, and it's very much it's an audience driven understanding on both sides, from music and from the social side and the imagery. I have a couple of clients that have invested in TikTok over the last couple of years, wanting to obviously grow their audience and continue to establish themselves as something that's relatable to a younger demographic. And I think if you do it the right way and it's credible and it's organic, there's no reason why you can't have both. You have your cake and eat it.
Sure.
So the music is one aspect, and that's fundamentally the reason why the DJ's there in the first place. And that's what they're doing every weekend as they're performing. It's about the music. It's not so much about the show around it, unless you're a big arena level act that's putting all that money into SFX and pyro and LED. So it's still very much important to what we do. But there is that side angle to everything else that, we'll talk about Seth Troxler. So Seth's a client, has been for almost 15 years, I think. He's very much doing a wonderful part of curating everything about Seth in the music space. So he continues to play really credible underground clubs. He plays P-Bar 2-3 times a year, as well as doing the bigger things. But he's also spun off various different verticals in his career. He had Smoky Tails, which was the barbecue kind of brand barbecue joint that he did. He's worked alongside many different artists and doing different collaborations. He just did a coffee table photography book with Bill Patrick, which was really interesting. It's self-published. It's sold out its first run of edition. And, he's looked at TikTok as a way to reach a younger audience and a different kind of audience. He's always been relatable to food. It's been one of his joys. So he's been documenting himself while he's traveling around the world, going to some amazing food joints, trying different kinds of wonderful food and talking about it and almost promoting it as a kind of different side to what he does as an artist. So I do believe that the two can go hand in hand and they can work concurrently as long as you do it in the right way and it's the right credible way.
Yeah. I mean, do you have a sense that it's changed significantly since short form video became such of a significant thing? I mean, I suppose particularly for the younger audience, but actually it's not just the younger audience, is it too? I mean, I find myself spending far too much time scrolling through Instagram Reels.
I actually don't have TikTok. I made a pledge to myself not to have it.
Yeah.
But it's breaking records like used to from an A&R perspective. Record companies are putting a lot more money into time and investment when it comes to TikTok. So we have it on a regular basis. People will send me stuff, and I have to get someone else in the office to look at their TikTok to see what it actually is because I don't have it. But it's definitely records are getting broken that way. Labels are using that as an A&R tool. Artists are using it as a way to get to a new audience and grow their fan base out.
Okay, right. Steve, this has been great. Let me finish off by asking you for a couple of examples of nightmare scenarios that you've had to deal with as an agent. You don't have to name names.
I mean, the biggest nightmare scenario is trying to deal with the finances or something if it goes wrong. So there's a couple of times where we've arrived on show day and certain things have not been as they were supposed to be when it came to production or became to the venue and the way it's presented. So last minute kind of scrambling around to try and make things work, which have become very expensive, which have eaten into the artist's guarantee. And then I've had to have that awkward conversation with them after the show about how we're going to fix this, how we're going to make this work. That's always a tough one to deal with. I've actually had a few safety issues over the years with some shows where some South America, where we've actually turned up on the day of the show to start, setting up and sound check and get it done. And the actual structure, the infrastructure of the stage, integrity of the stage was brought into question.
Okay.
And
that's a bit of a problem.
That's a real problem. Yeah, so those have happened. Had a show a couple of years ago where we had to actually do a show stop because one of the eagle-eyed technical crew spotted something was vibrating and moving in the ceiling. So we actually had to stop the show and clear the venue out. So right in the middle of a show, that's a real awkward problem to deal with. But
oh my God, yeah.
These are things we have to deal with on a regular basis, and it could be there's small things that can become hill of beans that you have to deal with on a show, and generally it's I'm very adaptable. I can ebb and flow and roll with the punches. So if I'm at a show and we have a problem to deal with, you've got to have your wits about you. There's the old there's a little bit of a kind of misnomer that the agent just does the show and then turns up and drinks the rider. You know, it's nice. It's nice to have a couple of drinks at the gig, but I've got to have my wits about me.
Dead mouse, you mean?
I got to have my wits about me in case anything goes wrong. So there are times I've had to manage those kind of opportunities, and it's about just keeping your wits about you and keeping on your toes. But do you know what? I absolutely love what I do, and I'm very fortunate to be in this place. I say to the guys all the time that we work with, remember, it's a privilege to do what we do. And from an early age of going clubbing and cutting my teeth and buying records, you know, to be where I am now and having interactions with some of the biggest artists in the world in the electronic space, sometimes I just count my blessings, and love doing what I'm doing, and hopefully it continues for many more years to come.
Absolutely. Right. So yeah, last one. What's coming up this summer that you're most looking forward to?
Holiday.
Really? Staying out of those
Actually,
annoying
I'm really
festivals.
looking forward to, we've got the opening of the new Universe Club in Ibiza, which is the end,
that's
end
the
of May.
old coup, right?
Yeah, the Privilege Club.
Yeah.
So I was very fortunate to have a little walk through there a few weeks ago, back in March, and it's very much, it's really taken shape. I think it's really going to give everybody, it's going to be an amazing experience. I think from an artist perspective, as a DJ, the way that the venue is laid out, no matter where you are in the room, everyone's going to be able to have eyes on you. So it's really well constructed. The team there from High Scream obviously did High and Ushuaia, so they've learned a few things from those venues that they can adapt and take into this venue. And I think it's going to really up everyone's game on the islands. So it's going to be really interesting to see how things develop. But that's something I'm really looking forward to. That's the end of May.
Who is playing there this summer? What are the key residents?
I should be able to tell you actually. So Monday is Eric Prydz, Tuesday is Anima, Wednesday is Paradise, Jamie Jones, Thursday is Fisher, Friday is David Guetta, Saturday is Elro, and Sunday is Carl Cox.
Right.
There you go.
Okay.
Not bad.
So it's proper music in quotation marks, right? All week.
Yeah.
There's none of none of that EDM nonsense.
Yeah, I think,
stuff.
it's going to be really interesting to see how it goes. And I think everybody's going to want to go and see it. So the club's going to have an amazing opening year. The real impact will be year 2 and see if people want to go back and visit again. But we'll see. It's going to be a challenging year for Ibiza this year. I think there's a lot. Obviously, prices are up, and everyone complains about the ticket pricing, etc., for clubs. But that's built up with the infrastructure, and I think it's going to be interesting to see what state Ibiza is in by the end of the season. I do believe it's going to be a very healthy year for the island.
Yeah. Great. Well, listen, thanks for your time, man. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me on the podcast, Paul. Appreciate it.
Music, not diving, with Scuba.